Loktargar friends. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for another Orc Mode workout. And today was Dynamic Effort Squat and Deadlift Day. One of those days where the training was good, but man, I felt rough. My chest was really sore today. I'm still getting used to the way I'm arching right now, which is putting an enormous amount of stretch reflex on my pecs on my speed work. So my pecs actually really hurt today from those sets yesterday, which made, getting into my squat position a little uncomfortable, but I did it. I had to do some extra foam rolling. I actually foam rolled my pecs and stuff. I know that's ridiculous. Foam rolled my pecs before I warmed up. A lot of people ask me, like, Jason, what's your warm-up look like for squats? It really isn't. I foam roll my upper back. I lay on the foam roller, and I do one set of box jumps, like on my plyometrics box. That's my warm-up to squat. Then I get under a bar and just start hitting singles, even for speed work. I mean, I do like 2 warm-ups before I get under this. So, not really much to it. Today was one of those days where I thought, again, that I got my 8 sets. It turned out 7. It's on camera. Maybe I can't count. So I'm just making sure I do at least 1 extra set of box jumps to make up for it, to make sure I'm getting enough explosive work for the quads on these days. But, pretty fatiguing. And I feel like still with the speed squats, even though I'm doing the percentages correctly, I almost feel like I need to drop the weight down just a hair so I can get more bar speed. I need to work on my general explosiveness, and I feel like I just need to get faster. And so maybe I'm going a hair too heavy, even though it's stuff like 55%. All right, numbers like that, 55, 60% at the most, plus the accommodating resistance. But I do use a lot of accommodating resistance. Like, I generally try to shoot for around 25% of my max. So if my max on a lift is 500 pounds, I try to run 125 pounds of chains, 125 pounds of bands. Some cases more band, like on the deadlift. All right, I'll run 150 plus pounds of band tension for speed pulls. But it ended up being 7 sets of 3. And I mean, they're decently fast, but they could stand to be faster. They could stand to be faster. But the nice thing, though, is that it does give me a lot of practice. I get a lot of practice. And I think that's one reason I'm going to drop back down to triples for the bench. I just need more total sets. And the same with this, getting 7 or 8 sets. I need to make sure I start getting my 8. Gives me more practice getting set up under the bar, more practice getting the squat, trying to learn not to rock the box, which matters a lot. And yeah, on my max effort days, I'm going to be doing a lot more quad work. Because I've had people ask about that. Yeah, quads need to be a priority. A lot of quad hypertrophy, because I know that's my weak link right now on my squatting. Deadlifts have their own set of weak links. So, all has to be trained. But today, yeah, it ended up being pretty tiring because my thumb skin started giving out. And I mean, I did lots of them, and it wasn't really painful. It's that as I started peeling chunks of skin off. Like, you guys might be able to see some of it. I came up and showed it in front of the camera. So basically, it's kind of the area of your thumb that's just barely an edge away from where it's supposed to be touching the bar when you hook grip. And because I'm doing so many sets, and the first few sets, it feels like I'm getting my hook set correctly, that sometimes I peel loose that callus. So what had happened is that I built like a blister and a callus there from a couple weeks back that had built up on a part of my thumb that really gets a secondary stress from the hook grip. That happens usually only in my early sets, and because the early set started tearing it free, it continued to tear free during the rest of it. And there's going to be some stress there, but really the stress on your thumb when you're doing the hook grip is supposed to be on the end half of the digit, right? Like your pad of your thumb, like not anywhere near the crease. And it's like that, it's before the knuckle joint is where it kind of peeled the skin free, which you guys will see as I'm approaching the camera each time. Some of them you may be able to see it. I haven't looked yet, but you may be able to actually see them when I turn the camera on and off. And I know I held it up one time, but it actually progressively did more and more until it just basically took about a 1-inch long strip of like dried callus or blister off of my thumb. But I was worried about it, so I stopped at 18. All right, I did 18 singles. I tried to get up to 20, but we stopped at 18. because I felt like that was becoming an issue. And plus that extra skin trying to peel away, felt like it was starting to get in the way of the bar, and I didn't want to cut it off yet because, you know, I don't want to risk a sharper edge just going to tear. So, I mean, all in all, I mean, it went good. I mean, I'm not really complaining. The actual speed pulls felt good. I felt like I got a good training effect. And this was the heaviest week in my wave. If you're less curious, what do I have on the bar? 315 on the bar, plus 125 pounds of chains. So, I mean, it's not super heavy. I mean, we're talking about 440 at the lockout. A little bit of chain is on there at the very bottom. So, you know, maybe 320, 325 at the bottom. It very quickly ramps up, though, because that chain hits immediately. The only reason the chain is unloaded is because it's piled on itself, and it very quickly, as you guys can see, it's coming up fast. So, about 320, 325 at the bottom, 440 on the lockout. So, I mean, this is not super, super heavy. But those lockouts, they just accrue that stress on the thumbs. But all in all, my thumbs don't really hurt. I mean, they're slightly tender even after having done these 18 singles. But that's always going to be a factor. And I'm starting to do more grip work, more pinch block work. I do my farmer's walks. I'm going to have to just keep training my hands, keep toughening up my hands, because they could be a weak link. And, you know, that's one of the things I point out to people is that the grip strength in the hands do matter, and that's the reason in any test of strength we need a lift in there that uses grip strength, because if you don't have that, you don't know how strong you are. Meaning that's one of the reasons that something like powerlifting is a good measure of overall strength. It's not that the 3 power lifts are themselves magical. Right? They're big, heavy movements that are arguably arbitrary, with arguably arbitrary ranges of motion that have been standardized. But they're a good standard because they use every muscle in the body other than the biceps. It has an upper body dominant lift that still uses some lower, a lower body dominant lift that still uses some upper, that are both very muscle mass based. Then it has a full body exercise that also tests the grip. All right, because grip strength is part of your strength. I mean, if you can't pull on something, you can't produce force. So it's the combination of the 3 is really good metric of strength. And I think that's the whole point too that people need to remember with what I'm doing. It's not that I'm training just for powerlifting. I'm training to be all around strong. And if you're all around strong, you'll be good at the power lifts, right? Hopefully people grasp that, because they are a realistic test of strength. You see my thumb there? See what I'm talking about? That whole blister you see there that's ripping came off. It tore off around rep 15. So it came off completely. But it was starting to split there. It was getting a split running down it and starting to pull away. That is really not the part of your thumb that takes the most of the force on the hook grip. It's that in my early sets, as I'm getting the hook set, I tend to rub that against the side more. And so it tends to rub that away. And then that skin underneath, it gets a bit tender. As you start peeling that away, that knurling rubs against that a bit, even though it doesn't take most of it. It does start to become pretty tender as you go. So the point, though, I was making is that it is a good overall test of strength. It really is. But the speed pulls went good overall. I mean, other than the thumb thing, I was happy with them. I mean, the bar speed's decent. They could always stand to be better. I'm going to keep working and getting them better. Feel like my mobility has gotten better. I'm getting better at doing my sumo stuff. But yeah, it's all coming along. But the thing is, yeah, this is one of those days to where even after that deload, half-week deload coming in, doing the stuff for my benching differently is really leaving me sore. It really is. So I had to kind of fight through that early in the workout. As I got further into the workout, it bothered me less and less, but it's one of those things too where it did make me kind of go, man, I don't really like training today. But there are times you just have to suck it up. Realize that I love this, love training, want to train hard, want to get stronger. And you just got to suck it up and do it. You got to suck it up and do it. And I think people would be surprised. You know, they probably think that the max effort days are the hardest. They're really not. Max effort days compared to dynamic effort days, max effort days are more psychologically taxing. All right, there's a certain psychological taxing that goes with coming and hitting a max. there's an emotional and psychological negative to that. Sometimes you have to get your head straight. The speed days are just straight up fatiguing. Speed work like this is fatiguing because you're doing this explosive movement, short breaks, a lot of volume of it, and then knowing that you have to do other work behind it. It's more physically fatiguing, whereas in my opinion, maxes are more psychologically fatiguing. That's how I would describe it. We're talking about max effort versus dynamic effort days. You just have to be in better shape for the DE days. And especially when you start cutting those rest times down, like when you're doing 30 to 60 seconds between the pulls, you're doing 90 seconds between the speed squats. It's a lot of work density. It's a lot of work density. And it seems to just accumulate, especially with the accommodating resistance, because it's still, in terms of what's sitting on your back and sitting in your hands and everything else, even though the hardest part of the movement, the weights are lighter and unloaded, and it's really the easier parts to where you're doing the heavier weight. It's still also that accumulation of just holding that weight in your hands over and over. That's one reason it works so well for the grip training. It's that weight at the lockout on the squats over and over. Because you're spending a lot of time with a weight that's very likely like 80% of your max sitting up on top of your shoulders. Like in my case, my max box squat, we know for now, is 502. So to have over 400 pounds sitting on my shoulders for 7 or 8 triples, it starts to add up. Same thing, to lock out, 440, 15 to 20 times, starts to have a toll on your hands, right? So you also get the axial loading effect of all of that too. Same thing with the benching. You're hitting those lockouts, and off the chest it might not be super heavy on the speed work, but the lockouts are, and you're exploding into that lockout. So it does seem to take its overall fatigue. And as far as the conditioning side goes, right, it actually does train your conditioning to some extent to do these. And it also tests your conditioning. So your GPP work really, really becomes important for the speed days, because if you're not in reasonable shape, these are just too much, because you end up doing so much volume in such a short period of time in terms of total work density and just the weight sitting on your back over and over and over in your hands, all that stuff. But because I also, again, missed a set on the speed squats, we did an extra set of box jumps. So we did 6 sets of 3. And for those curious, again, what I'm doing there, I weighed 218 this morning. I've got a 25-pound kettlebell, and I'm jumping onto a 24-inch box. You guys can see it's a Titan plyo box. Pretty obvious. You can just see the 20-inch side down, the bottom turned up. So it's pretty obvious I'm on the 24. And again, nothing to it. Wearing my boots, got a 25-pound kettlebell, and these aren't exceptionally hard. Eventually I might work towards heavier, or might work towards getting up onto the 30 with a weight, but I'm just going to take my time slowly with this. I'm getting the effect I want. I'm getting a training effect of getting more explosive work in that has a jump component after doing my other speed work. I mean, and these are reasonably challenging, and if I was fresh, these would be nothing. They just wouldn't be a big deal. If I was fresh, I could probably easily jump up on the 30. Wouldn't be that hard. But after doing the speed squats and speed pulls, I am probably a hair less explosive. I've used some of that resource up. So we work with what we have, but we want to make sure that we train it. And I mean, box jumps are mini. They're the best. Coaches in the world agree. Box jumps help you squat. They help your general explosiveness. And someone had asked me before, and I'll remind them again, why a box? Simply put, it's a lower risk of injury. There is no benefit to landing on the ground. The explosive part comes from the actual jump, not the landing. So dropping to the ground doesn't improve your explosiveness. And in fact, some people say, why don't you even drop down and reuse that rebound to jump up? Because again, you're just risking damaging an Achilles tendon. And there's no actual real training benefit. You get all the training benefit you want jumping onto a box. Every strength and conditioning coach in the world agrees. Then I did some good mornings, man. These were really awkward running this much chain weight, and it just felt terrible up on my back, but I did them anyways. And the only reason I did that, I already had that much chain weight loaded, so I'm like, let me just do my good mornings with 125 pounds of chains, right? Not a big deal, get in and do it. But man, with that, my really coarse bar, because I used my deadlift bar, it really just rubbed my back. rubbed my back big time, sitting there into that lower bar type position, especially when I added weight. But I did my 3 sets of 10, and I was pretty fatigued after all my work today. I realized I'm done. This is really all I can do. My 3 sets of this, and I'm going to call it quits. I might try to do some other stuff later. I might try to do some GHRs or something, depending on how my hamstrings feel. But I've just come back from my deload. I'm going to ramp stuff back up over the next few weeks. Increase workloads, volumes, whatever I need to do. I'm going to have to do a lot more quad work, a lot more tricep work, all that stuff. So I'm not going to just totally kill it on this day back. It's a lot of work. It's challenging. I'm working hard, but I'm really sore from the benching yesterday. It's really left my chest sore, and I just don't want to train myself into the ground. I just want a nice, good training effect. And these were hard enough. I'm not used to running this much chain weight, and so it was kind of a novel training response anyways. So, we'll see how it goes. I'll see how I feel tomorrow. But I did need to do some relatively heavy good mornings today. So again, this just fit the bill. It was easy to set up because I already had the deadlift bar over there. I already had those chains loaded, so I just threw it on there and decided to do that instead of setting up my band pegs. Next week for this, I'll probably just hook the bands and everything back up because I'll already have my band pegs out. I'll have them set over by the rack because I'll be doing my speed work with bands. So they'll already be there, and so I'll probably do it that way. Sometimes it's just a matter of convenience. I mean, some of these assistance movements, I just want to get them done and not waste a lot of time on the setup. And if I have something set up to do it, I just do it. Because at the end of the day, it's still just about the training fatigue and the stimulus. And I don't have to perfectly wave load assistance movements and stuff. I just need to train hard on them and get the appropriate training response where I need it to get as thick as peanut butter. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.